coming on the air tonight with intense winter weather pounding the country. It is dangerous. It is deadly with dramatic rescues in the Midwest and the South. We're going to show you as we take you live to where things are worst and get into how people are managing in conditions that we haven't seen in years. Plus, some breaking news tonight after Alec Baldwin charged again with involuntary manslaughter. Why a grand jury decided to revive the criminal case against him months after that original one with the Rust movie got dismissed. Plus, check this out. It's a little plane making an emergency landing not on a runway, but on a road in the middle of Virginia. More on what happened and why. Then the S&P hitting a record high on the same day. New numbers show more and more people are starting to actually feel good about the economy. So is the vibe session finally over? Plus, did you spend your whole day sitting at a desk doing your work? Pro tip from the experts. Bottoms up, folks. You might live longer. More on that new study a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air as the East Coast gets pummeled by yet another winter storm. Shockingly deadly. 52 people in all who've been killed in the snow and freeze over the past week as we're getting new video in of first responders rushing to try to prevent any more casualties. Look at this video. This is from the Kentucky State Police. It shows the helicopter rescue of 4 college students. They went hiking. They got stuck in these brutal conditions. This helicopter, look at that, managed to land. They go rushing in, rushing through. They got safely out, incredibly. And then there's this in Michigan. A state police officer helps a dog save his owner who fell through the ice. So the dog, watch this, runs over to the trapped man with a rescue disc for him to grab. He takes it. He's pulled up out of the water, pulled to safety, I should say. It is unbelievable to see here. This is Buffalo, too, or just outside, rather, where New York area schools are closed yet again in that region, becoming really a snow dungeon. You see cars covered, houses, streets, just about everything in sight. Several school districts also closed in Oregon out west, with streets there still frozen over after an ice storm earlier this week left behind a trail of damage. Nearly 100,000 people in that state still do not have power. Some people haven't had the lights on for days. The temperatures in a lot of spots is just brutally cold with wind chills below zero. You can see it here, and all the weather is creating a headache at airports. More delays again today with the snow and ice piling up. 6,000 flight delays, another 1,000 cancellations altogether. We've got it covered from every angle. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is standing by, but I want to get to George Solis, who's live for us out in Philly, a city, George, that really hasn't seen a ton of snow the past couple years. Now they could get up to 5 inches in one day.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Just a reminder of how scenic but how treacherous these conditions can be when you put it all together. As you mentioned here in Philadelphia, more than 700 days where a winter alert like this has not been issued. And so what we saw today was naturally just a lot of crews with snow plows and salt, making sure that these conditions did not get worse. Some of the areas here have seen 3 inches, and we're expecting a bit more, even though the snow is starting to taper. We know that the temperatures are going to start to plummet. So obviously any untreated surface areas that have melted slightly, the freeze comes in, and that is a big concern, especially when you have people that haven't been used to driving in these icy conditions. And so that is going to be the focus here into the evening hours as crews again go out to make sure they continue to treat these surfaces. Not to say, though, some people haven't been taking some of the day to enjoy some of the more snowy and hilly terrain, some of the kids out there, some people that are working remotely. But again, people that were taking this seriously got all their supplies, make sure that their equipment, their tools were set to weather this storm, and many hoping that the worst of it is now over. We caught up with some people preparing and making sure that they had everything that they needed for this winter event. Take a listen.
Honestly, it's kind of scary. I mean, just making sure your tires are all set up, but it's also fun. I love snow. It looks like chaos, but it's also peaceful at the same time.
I'm parked on a hill. I'm watching people slip up and down the street, so take it slow.
Yeah, and Hallie, as we've been looking at the road here, we're in Manayunk, which is a very popular area, a lot of restaurants and bars, many of them closing today, some of them opening for a little while, but now some of that untreated area, again, turning to slush now. So that's going to be, again, the big concern as the temperatures begin to plummet here this evening, and some of the snow turns to slush, turns to ice. Hallie?
George Solis live for us there in Philly, in Manayunk. George, thanks. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is joining us now, too. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Please say yes.
I know. Well, it depends on where you are. So if you're in the Northeast, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Not quite tonight, not quite tomorrow, not quite Sunday. But by next week, we're going to see those temperatures come back up, and that's going to help a lot. Because we're looking at a lot of snow falling right now, still in parts of southern New Jersey, some of the suburbs of Philadelphia as well. I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, so already dreading my commute home. We're looking at 49 million people still under winter weather alerts. These will start to drop off over the next couple of hours. That widespread snow has stopped, but we're still seeing bands. We're still seeing some squalls as well. So this is what radar looks like right now. You can see all the blue on the map here. So we're still seeing snow falling, especially in parts of southern New Jersey, parts of Delaware into Salisbury, Maryland, and also still looking at that lake effect snow. So that is not going to be turned off for quite a while. We are hardly even frozen over with some of these lakes, but this will start to move out. Unfortunately, we're going to see those temperatures plummet like George had mentioned, and that's going to ice everything over. So it is snowy. Snowy. It's going to be a tough commute for many tonight as we go throughout the evening commute. This storm will quickly exit. Then we're looking at that really cold wind coming over the lakes tomorrow. So we're going to see more lake effect snow. We're going to see some strong winds, drifting snow, some really cold temperatures. And that's why we're looking at 61 million people under wind chill alerts, because we're going to feel like minus 20 to minus 30 in some spots. Hallie?
Michelle Grossman, thank you very much. We'll be checking back in with you, I know, throughout the night. Appreciate it. Let's get to some developing news now tonight, because Alec Baldwin has been charged again with involuntary manslaughter. You remember that fatal Rust movie set shooting in 2021? Cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was killed. And if you're like, well, wait a second, I thought those charges were dropped against Baldwin. You are correct. That original case was dismissed last April, with prosecutors citing new facts in the case. Now, by dismissing the case, they left the door open to Baldwin being charged again. That is what is happening today, as he was indicted by a New Mexico grand jury. Remember, Baldwin has consistently said that he did not pull the trigger when that gun fired the shot that killed Hutchins, with his lawyers today saying, we look forward to our day in court. Chloe Malas is joining us now, and this is, in some ways, whiplash here, right? Because the new facts, so it's what they're called in this case, dealt with evidence that the gun had been modified. Walk us through that. Walk us through what else we should be knowing about this Baldwin situation.
Yeah, so these same prosecutors are the ones who dismissed these charges in April. And what they said at the time was that they needed, Jason Lewis and Carrie Morrissey, that they needed more time to review the evidence, okay? And they started interviewing individuals over the course of the summer. And we also know that they sent the gun that fired that live round of ammunition to their own forensics team. And this forensics team, Hallie, are the ones who said that absolutely this gun, according to them, did not malfunction, that Alec Baldwin would have had to have pulled the trigger, something that Alec Baldwin has maintained in interviews with myself when I was at CNN, in interviews with George Stephanopoulos at ABC News, that he did not pull the trigger. How big of an issue is this for Alec Baldwin? It's hard to say. This will potentially go to trial. He could face up to 18 months of jail time. If the prosecutors recommend jail time, they might not, right? It could be probation and a fine. And does it hurt his career? That's also unclear as well. I think it's just time and money for him, and then potentially his reputational damage.
Two more questions for you, Chloe. What is the timeline for any sort of resolution to this, when we might know more here on this front? Do we know?
I mean, if you look at what has happened with the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, she also was charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter in January of 2023. So it's been almost a full year that has passed before she now goes to trial next month. So it could potentially be about a year until Alec Baldwin goes to trial, maybe sooner. And so there is time for his team to build a case. And, you know, obviously other motions and things like that could be filed where they could delay things even further. But it is likely that it will go to trial. And then also will be interesting to see if Alec Baldwin takes the stand.
What about the actual movie production itself? Because things started happening, I think, in Montana last year, right, as they were sort of wrapping things up. Should we expect to see this movie come out after literally years of headlines about it, given the horrific circumstances, of course, of what happened to Halyna Hutchins?
So that film did get finished not that long ago, and Alec Baldwin actually returned to reprise his role. And this actually was all part of a wrongful death settlement suit that was filed by Halyna Hutchins' widower, Matthew Hutchins. So her husband filed this wrongful death suit. He became an executive producer or producer on the film, which means he's obviously getting money on the back end here, and we don't know how much. And it was all contingent on Alec Baldwin going back to film. So when those charges were dismissed against Alec Baldwin in April, it was a good thing for him and the producers because that meant that he didn't have charges looming and he could go back and film. Now, so the movie is in the can. It's done. Is it going to be released? That's up to the producers. We've reached out at NBC News for comment. But in theory, we could see that movie come out this year. I don't think it's going to be some massive box office success, but obviously there will be a cult following of people that are going to want to see this film. And in a way, there is a silver lining because any money made from this movie, some of that will go to Helena Hutchins' husband, Matthew, and their son.
Chloe Malas, thank you so much. A lot of news developing just the last couple hours. We're glad you're on top of it. Appreciate it. So look at this. I want you to check this out. We're about to show it to you. The bizarre moments when flames start shooting out of a plane. This is a Boeing cargo plane you're seeing. It's heading to Puerto Rico. You've got the NTSB and the FAA now looking into it. Watch this.
Oh, my God. It's on fire.
Yes, it was on fire. Somebody captured that video, obviously, showing that Atlas Air cargo flight over Miami with what looks like, I mean, honestly, a trail of flames behind it there. Atlas saying in a statement today the plane had to make an emergency landing after it had engine issues not long after takeoff. Here's what that moment sounded like from inside the cockpit.
Mayday, Mayday, Giant 095, heavy engine fire. Request taxi back to the airport. John 95, which engine, and is it out already, or you guys are still trying to work that out? It's engine number 2, and we're still trying to work it out. Roger. John 95, did you guys lose it on the runway or in the air? On the climb out. Roger.
As we mentioned, this was a Boeing plane, making it just the latest issue with a Boeing aircraft here. Boeing says it has no comment on this latest incident. Of course, it's happening just 2 weeks after that door plug blew off an Alaska Airlines plane, also a Boeing plane, midair. Marissa Parra is joining us now from Miami. Watching that video, Marissa, you can't help but think that this had the potential to end very differently. Thankfully, everybody was okay. But with the NTSB and the FAA involved, are we learning anything else about what happened here or where this investigation goes?
Well, Hallie, I'll start off by saying, watching that video, even just watching it on the monitor here, it's so scary. You can't even imagine what the person filming that video must have been thinking, let alone the 5 people aboard. And I got to give credit to the crew. This was a cargo plane, as you mentioned, and they were able to make a safe emergency landing. Here's what we know so far about that flight. It took off around 10:22 last night from Miami International Airport. It was on the way to Puerto Rico when less than 10 minutes later, it needed to make an emergency landing here. So it landed sometime around 10:30. According to the communication with air traffic control, you can hear them making the Mayday calls, and they reported an engine fire. As we have talked about, this is a Boeing 747, and Atlas Air has put out a statement. They said, by the way, Atlas Air does have one of the largest Boeing 747 freighter fleets. They said in a statement that they had an engine malfunction. There are not very many details right now, Hallie, but a source familiar with the investigation says to NBC News that an early look at the engine revealed a, quote, softball-sized hole above the number 2 engine. So I'm also told by someone who has an understanding of how these investigations go, that something they're going to be looking at is whether this was a contained or uncontained engine failure. So many questions remain right now in terms of what happens next. Boeing has remained, I would say, pretty much hands off in terms of putting out statements, really only saying that they're going to be supporting not just the company, their customer, but also the NTSB in their investigation. And we do know the NTSB says that they are going to be investigating this. They will have a team on the ground here, Hallie.
So I think that there's a question that people have when they hear this, when they see this, when they look at the company involved, which of course is Boeing here. Everybody, I think, knows about the other incident, the door plug incident on that Alaska Air flight, also a Boeing plane. There have been, of course, as Tom Costello has talked about extensively here on this show and elsewhere, a history, right, a string of incidents dating back years now with Boeing planes. Do we know the answer to this question yet? Is this another example of potential issues that are more systemic at Boeing, or is this like a freak accident at just a very bad time for the company? Do we have any sense of that yet?
That is the million-dollar question, Hallie. We know what Boeing is going to want to say. We know what critics of Boeing are going to want to say, and that's why we have an independent party, the NTSB and the FAA, looking into this to answer exactly that. But obviously, this is not a good look for Boeing to have yet another incident, at least just to have their name associated with another incident. But, you know, I've reached out to my sources who are familiar with how these types of investigations go, just to even get a sense of what they're thinking. They said, we really just don't even have enough details right now to have a sense of was this a manufacturer of the engine or was this Boeing's problem? And this is something that obviously we'll be staying on top of, Hallie.
Marissa Parra, I know you will, live for us there in Miami. Thank you. To some other breaking news now, also aircraft related. 7 people on a small plane making an emergency landing, not on a runway, but on a road. A busy highway, basically, the Loudoun County Parkway in Virginia. Look at this. That's the plane just sitting on the road minutes after it left Dulles Airport. It had been heading up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a Southern Airways flight. And also, incredibly here, nobody was hurt. This is a live look here from one of the cameras of the scene, still very active. You got emergency crews still out there. So is NBC's WRC reporter Mauricio Casillas, who's joining us now from our station here in D.C. What happened here? Was this weather related? Anybody in Washington, Mauricio, knows that it's snowing. It was today. Do we know anything else about the circumstances?
Yeah, Hallie, that's a central question out here tonight. What crews are still trying to figure out. You can see behind me, it's an astonishing scene, really. That single-engine Cessna that, as you mentioned, turned this highway, the Loudoun County Parkway, into a runway. We're still trying to figure out if it was weather-related, but, you know, a lot of snow was coming down here earlier. It left Dulles International Airport, which is about 2 miles away, and then minutes later, it veered south before making that emergency landing. The astonishing thing here is that no one was hurt. All 7 passengers, the 5 passengers and the 2 crew members, were able to make it out alive, and then no one on the roadways was hurt. I mean, and the thing here is that the weather ironically played a role in it, because a lot of people were off because it was a school day. So a busy rush hour traffic that you normally see, you're not seeing right now. And then that's one of the reasons I think today we're seeing a scene that is astonishing, but, you know, could have been a lot worse, Hallie.
Yeah, and that's a great point, too. School was closed today. You had a lot of offices closed because of the snow in D.C., so maybe that meant fewer people on the road. Mauricio, thank you so much for being there, and thanks to our friends at WRC. It's good to see you. In just the next couple of hours, you've got former President Trump set to get an endorsement, a big endorsement, potentially, from South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Remember, at one point in this race, a rival to Mr. Trump. The whole thing, kind of a snub to Scott's fellow South Carolinian Nikki Haley, who also happens to be Mr. Trump's chief rival in New Hampshire. It's coming as Haley is cramming her schedule there with 6 events today, knowing that this could be a make-or-break state for her campaign once voters hit the polls on Tuesday. And while the future of her candidacy after that might be up in the air, she's making pretty clear today what she will not be doing, telling reporters earlier that serving as a VP, as vice president on a ticket, would be, in her words, off the table. That's really the most definitive she's been on this yet. Means former President Trump can cross her off his potential VP list, a list, according to NBC News reporting, that includes the woman you see here, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. She is set to be on the campaign trail for Mr. Trump tomorrow. She checks a lot of his favorite boxes. She got some national attention recently for her grilling of university presidents over claims of anti-Semitism. Another thing that probably grabs Mr. Trump's attention, her fierce loyalty to him. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is joining us now from Concord, New Hampshire. And there's a sort of thread that ties these 2 pieces of news together, and that is Tim Scott himself, because this endorsement, besides being a snub in some ways to Nikki Haley, also maybe starts to ramp up a little of the Veep stakes talk around Tim Scott.
Right. There's talk, Hallie, for months about potentially coalescing of people like Tim Scott around a Trump alternative, like a Nikki Haley, per se. But instead, what we're now watching is this coalescing of power and support around Donald Trump. When you look at, Hallie, the congressional endorsements, right now, Donald Trump continues to rack up his support. This is a moment where Nikki Haley, by contrast, and Ron DeSantis don't have any senators supporting and endorsing their candidacy here. And when you're talking about Tim Scott, you know, the reason Tim Scott was able to make it to the U.S. Senate was because he was initially appointed by none other than then South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. I want to let you look at Nikki Haley's statements here this afternoon upon the news of Tim Scott's endorsement coming out. She writes, quote, "Interesting that Trump's lining up with all of the Washington insiders when he claimed he wanted to drain the swamp. But the fellas are going to do what the fellas are going to do." Tim Scott is on his way here to New Hampshire right now with Donald Trump aboard his plane and will be appearing on stage alongside of him at a time in which Donald Trump is also currently facing a jury who is determining the extent to which he owes damages to E. Jean Carroll for having sexually abused her in the 1990s, Hallie.
There's also, when you talk about the sort of rumors around this VP pick, you've got questions around who it could be. You got Don Jr. coming out saying Tucker Carlson could be a contender. But I think the bottom line with even talking about the Veep stakes when we haven't even hit New Hampshire yet, Vaughn, is a sense of perhaps, right, what feels like to some an inevitability around former President Trump, because you don't start talking about VP until you have a presidential nominee, right? I mean, typically that's how these things tend to go.
Right. Right, and usually those conversations happen in the summer before the election, but we're still in January here. And yet, if he has a defining win in New Hampshire, and polls suggest that he's looking really good in South Carolina, Nikki Haley's home state, suddenly that's where the VP talk is only going to continue to escalate. And the difference this time around, I am consistently told by allies of Donald Trump, is that he wants a loyal defender by his side. Of course, he has aired his grievances with Mike Pence, who certified the 2020 election on January 6th, and Donald Trump all but cut ties with his former vice president in the aftermath of that. And that's where Elise Stefanik, she's a congresswoman from upstate New York. She served on his defense team during the House impeachment trial of Donald Trump. She is somebody who did not certify the 2020 election well in the U.S. House in 2021. And she is somebody who is gone on national press and continues to defend him and his actions in the past, the most controversial of actions. And so for Elise Stefanik, Tucker Carlson, these are names that should not be of surprise, because Donald Trump has made it clear that he wants somebody that will wholly stand behind him and somebody that he will not question inside of the White House in a second term.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in Concord, New Hampshire, on the trail where it's definitely not summer. Vaughn, thank you very much. I'll be joining him and our friends and colleagues on the road there in New Hampshire for all of our special coverage Tuesday night, starting basically right now, 5 o'clock Eastern. Tom Yamas, Kristen Welker will also be joining us as well. You can find it. You can watch it. However you are watching now, do not miss it. So listen, in just the last hour, you had the S&P closing at a record high for the first time in 2 years. Hey, the Dow, the NASDAQ, they're up too. They're all in positive territory for the year. Granted, a year that is only 19 days in, but still. It's coming as new data out today shows Americans are finally feeling better about the economy. It's according to a new survey from the University of Michigan. Look at this. Consumer confidence is the highest it's been since July of 2021. That is up more than 20% from a year ago. The survey also shows people are less worried about inflation, probably because it's been coming down from record highs for the last year or so. Lower inflation, obviously a good thing if you're waiting till 2024 to make some kind of big, important purchase, like a car or a house. With new data tonight showing the housing market in desperate need of a rebound anyway, with home sales last year the lowest they've been since 1995, the year the first Toy Story movie rolled into theaters. I want to bring in Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silber. So the sentiment about the economy is now 60% higher than the all-time lows we recorded back in not last June, but the June before, so June 2020. That was when people were feeling terrible about the economy. Since then, we've seen the numbers start to get better. People haven't been feeling better, maybe until now. Do you think that so-called vibe session is starting to end?
Yeah, it is starting to end, and people are feeling better. A lot of that has to do, as you mentioned, with inflation, particularly gas prices. That's the thing we see every time we leave our house. If gas prices are lower, we feel better, and they're about 33 cents lower than they were a year ago. So that's a pretty big deal in people's psyche right now. But things in general, prices are not increasing as much as they used to. Some are even going down. That's a big deal. And then you mentioned the stock market. Don't underestimate the wealth effect of the stock market being at a record high. It makes people feel wealthier, even though they may not necessarily be. So all these things pointing to a good sign, a potential soft landing for the economy. That's good news. Investors way out ahead of this. The stock market's been rallying since late October.
The housing market, too, if people are starting to feel better about things, depending on what the Fed does on interest rates, maybe people will start to think about, hey, is now the time when I can afford something like a house, even though we've seen prices for houses last year hitting record highs. So what's your outlook for 2024 if people were thinking about something like that?
We're going to see a little bit of a spring awakening for the housing market because interest rates are going down. Home prices still very high, but so many people on the sidelines waiting to buy a home. Just this stat will put it in perspective. In December, only 29% of the homes sold were from first-time home buyers. That's usually around 40%. They are waiting for rates to come down to get into the housing market. Hopefully, we're going to see that this spring because a good housing market keeps the economy humming, too. That could also be good news. A good news Friday, Hallie.
Caleb Silver, we will take it. Thank you from your lips to the universe's ears. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, we got a lot more to get to, including new allegations against the Georgia prosecutor investing former President Trump. Why the case against him could be in jeopardy because of plane tickets. Never before seen video shows former President Trump sitting down with New York's Attorney General last April, talking, among other things, about the legal fees he's racking up. Listen.
My biggest expense is probably legal fees, but fortunately, that's okay. But we have a lot of cash, we have great assets, and we have a very valuable company.
Now, that is part of Mr. Trump's civil fraud trial in New York, part of a looming web of legal issues that he faces. You see that web there. And today, we're zooming in on another one of those issues, the one out of Georgia, with new explosive claims against the district attorney there. Blaine Alexander explains in tonight's breakdown.
With former President Trump facing legal fights on multiple fronts, legal experts say it's the election interference case in Georgia that could prove to be the most legally perilous. Charges brought by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, accusing Trump and 18 co-defendants of a scheme to illegally overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia. A sprawling indictment stemming from that now infamous January 2021 phone call with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
But now, one of Trump's lesser-known co-defendants, Michael Roman, is making explosive allegations against Willis that could upend the case. Roman, who has pleaded not guilty to charges for his role in the so-called fake elector scheme, is accusing Willis of having a personal relationship with Nathan Wade, a special prosecutor hired by her office to work this case. In a motion filed last week, Roman alleges Willis is profiting significantly from the relationship, claiming Wade paid for vacations for the two of them with money he was paid by Willis's office. Roman claims that should disqualify Willis and force the court to dismiss the charges entirely. The motion, notably, did not provide any direct evidence of these claims, only citing, quote, sources with knowledge. So far, Wade has not commented on the allegations. A spokesperson for Willis declined comment and said the DA's office will respond in a court filing. But over the weekend, Willis appeared to indirectly address the allegations while speaking at a church for a Martin Luther King Day celebration.
I appointed 3 special counsel, as is my right to do, paid them all the same hourly rate. They only attacked one. First thing they say, oh, she gonna play the race card now. But no, God, isn't it them who's playing the race card when they only question one?
In yet another twist, Willis has also been subpoenaed to testify in Nathan Wade's ongoing divorce proceedings. Willis is pushing back, seeking a protective order to stop that subpoena, accusing Wade's estranged wife Joycelyn of trying to harass her and damage her professional reputation. In a statement to NBC News, an attorney for Joycelyn Wade said they had hoped to resolve the divorce fairly and privately, adding, but apparently Fulton County DA Fani Willis would prefer to use her public platform. And in a new filing today, Joycelyn Wade cites bank records that show her husband paid for multiple flights for himself and Willis. On February 15th, those initial allegations of misconduct will go before Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee in a scheduled hearing. He has given Willis until February 2nd to respond in writing to those allegations.
Blaine is joining us now outside the Fulton County Courthouse. Blaine, thank you for that breakdown tonight. So look ahead here. What else we know about these bank records and what you're hearing from legal experts on how real the concerns are here?
Well, Hallie, as you heard, there is a lot to sift through when you kind of look at these allegations that have become this kind of unexpected detour in this Fulton County case. But as for those bank records, they were just brought forward today as part of a filing. 4 pages of records, credit card records to be exact. I've gone through all of them, and they list at least 2 flights, one that show Willis and Wade traveling to, or at least intending to travel to San Francisco, the other to Miami. And so there are a couple of charges there, but those were what Joycelyn and Wade's attorneys were pointing to as saying that's evidence that they were, in fact, traveling together. Now, as for what this could mean for the overarching election interference case here, it's important to point out that even if DA Fani Willis is disqualified, of course, if she's disqualified, her office is disqualified, but that does not automatically mean these charges go away. It simply means that it shifts over to a different DA, a different jurisdiction in a neighboring county somewhere, and they would then move forward in prosecuting the charges. So it's not certainly a magic bullet. If she is, and that's a big if she is disqualified, doesn't mean the charges automatically go away. But what it does is that it certainly draws a lot of scrutiny to a case that is already getting a lot of criticism, a lot of attention, including from the former president himself. He has been talking about this, saying that this discredits the whole thing. He posted on Truth Social, his social media platform, not too long ago, calling Willis and Wade, quote unquote, the lovers, saying they knew that I did nothing wrong. The hoax has to be totally and completely dismissed, and the quote unquote lovebirds should face appropriate consequences. So certainly opening the entire thing up to criticism for those who were already looking not favorably upon these charges in the first place. Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, live for us there in Atlanta. Blaine, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, thousands of anti-abortion protesters showing up in Washington, D.C. today for the annual March for Life. It's the second one since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, of course, that landmark ruling. Since then, 14 states have banned abortion, while voters in 7 states have voted to protect abortion rights or to strike down new restrictions. It should be a big issue potentially coming up in the November election. Number 2, the CDC says a salmonella outbreak is tied to charcuterie meat sold at Sam's Club and Costco. The agency says at least 47 people across 22 states have gotten sick. 10 people ended up in the hospital after eating like the salamis and different, prosciuttos or whatever, Fratelli Beretta brand or Bissetto brand. Those are the 2 you got to think about. You can't buy them anymore, but officials are still looking into whether any other products could be contaminated. Number 3, Wayfair is laying off more than 1,500 employees, about 13% of its whole workforce. You might remember the CEO went viral last month for telling employees to work harder. Now he says the company went overboard in hiring during a strong economic period. Number 4, a new study from LendingTree shows single women in the U.S. own more homes than single men, like 3 million more. That's even though women still earn less money than men for the same job, according to Pew Research. Number 5, Apple says it'll open up its tap-and-go mobile pay system to its competitors. The company basically is trying to resolve an antitrust case that accuses it of restricting competition and also avoid a fine that could potentially be worth billions of dollars. The changes would last for a decade and apply to the EU and a couple other countries. Coming up here on the show, new details on a disturbing story about a flight attendant who tried to record a girl in a plane bathroom. More details on that coming up. Plus, what's happening at the LA Times today for the first time in the paper's nearly century-and-a-half history. We are just learning in the last couple minutes here that the U.S. is hitting the Houthis with more airstrikes in Yemen, adding to this tit-for-tat escalation we've been seeing, with the White House now suggesting allies are not doing enough to stop the attacks in the Red Sea. Adding to the tension in that region, the Israeli prime minister is getting on the phone with President Biden for the first time in nearly a month. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also telling the U.S. that he rejects the idea of a Palestinian state after the war in Gaza, in a new and public blow to the White House's push to get a plan in place that could bring this war to an end and put in place a longer-term solution in the region. That says a senior UN official now warns Gaza may be too far gone to save. Something like 60% of homes damaged in attacks, along with more than 300 schools, close to 400, more than 100 health facilities, raising more questions about what could come next for Gaza and the 2 million people who live there. Raf Sanchez has more from Tel Aviv.
Hallie, President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking tonight for the first time in nearly a month, which is really notable because in the days immediately after the October 7th Hamas terror attack, these 2 leaders were speaking almost every day. This conversation coming at a moment of very public disagreement between the two allies. The U.S. telling Israel it needs to scale down its war in Gaza faster. Israel says it is lowering the rate of airstrikes, but there are still more than 100 Palestinians being killed every day, including civilians, and also at loggerheads over the question of what comes next. The U.S. is saying Israel needs to end its occupation of the Palestinian people and allow for a pathway towards a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Netanyahu, at the head, of course, of a far-right government, saying that is a non-starter. The Prime Minister under pressure tonight from a member of his own war cabinet. Gadi Eisenkot is a senior Israeli minister. He's a former general. Hallie, he has a lot of stature in this country, partly because his own son was killed fighting in Gaza. Eisenkot giving this explosive interview to Israeli television saying Netanyahu is not telling the Israeli public the truth about the war, and saying that the prime minister very nearly triggered a second front with Hezbollah in Lebanon, something the U.S. has been very clear it does not want to see happen. Hallie.
Our thanks to Raf Sanchez for that reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Western Bureau, staffers at the LA Times are holding a one-day walkout today ahead of job cuts that are expected to come down. The Newsroom Guild, which reps about 400 workers, says this is the first such strike in the paper's history. According to an internal memo, LA Times management says it had to make cuts for cost-saving measures. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a midwife in New York is being fined $300,000 for making up vaccine records for 1,500 students. The state's health department says this whole scheme started back in 2019 and that it was for things like chickenpox and measles. A lawyer for the midwife says she fully cooperated with the investigation. And out of our Midwest Bureau, the 61st Annual World Championship Snowmobile Race kicking off today in Wisconsin. It had to be postponed because there wasn't enough snow last weekend. You got more than 400 racers from all across the country competing in a whole bunch of events. Guess how old the youngest competitor is? 5 years old. Guess how fast some of the sleds can go? To 100 miles per hour. Now that's for the adults. A former American Airlines flight attendant tonight is in custody for allegedly trying to record a young girl in the plane's bathroom, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Apparently, this male attendant escorted this 14-year-old to a bathroom that was open, but allegedly went inside before her, saying he had to wash his hands, that the toilet was broken. When she went in, she noticed this on the back of the toilet seat. It's a red sticker with a seat broken message on it, and at the bottom, do you see that? Looks like the light of a phone. She took a picture, then showed her parents. Law enforcement allegedly found 11 more stickers like this in his suitcase, they say, and even more videos of other female minors in his iCloud. American Airlines says the flight attendant has not worked since this incident in September, saying in a statement they take these allegations very seriously. Let's bring in David Noriega for more on this. And David, it's a story that's getting a lot of attention tonight, with the acting U.S. attorney here calling this deeply disturbing, saying it's not anything that any parent or child should ever have to worry about. Talk us more through it.
Yeah, Hallie, the court records in this case are, in fact, very disturbing and pretty upsetting to read. I read the affidavit that the FBI investigator in charge of the case filed as part of this prosecution. So up until this point, the story had been about how this flight attendant allegedly tried to record this young girl in the bathroom on this one flight. What's really disturbing about this is that when the FBI searched his iCloud account, they found several other videos of incidents in which he had apparently, allegedly, successfully done the same thing without getting caught in the act like he was in September. These are 4 videos, one of which was taken just about a week prior to the incident in September, all involving young girls, the youngest of whom, Hallie, was 7 years old when this happened. So as a result of this, Thompson now faces 2 counts, one for attempted sexual exploitation of children and another for possession of child pornography depicting a prepubescent child. He, each of those counts respectively could lead to him spending up to 30 years and 20 years in prison, so he could potentially be facing a significant period of time in prison. Hallie?
The 14-year-old girl's family is also holding American Airlines accountable here. What do they say should have happened?
Right, so they sued the airline last year shortly after this incident. And again, in their lawsuit is mostly just about this one incident that their daughter was involved in. They say that the airline should have known, either did know or should have known, that Thompson was a danger. They also say that other flight attendants should have done more to intervene. Now that we know these details about the fact that this individual was allegedly engaged in this activity in a sort of systematic way for months prior to this one incident when he was caught, I expect that probably will figure into the lawsuit and into the family's claim that the airline should have done more to prevent this from happening. Now, as you said, American Airlines has responded to this lawsuit saying that they are taking these allegations very seriously, that Thompson hasn't worked since this incident, and, they're going to have to let this all play out in court. Hallie?
David Noriega live for us with the story. David, thank you. Coming up here on the show, the Biden administration canceling billions more in student loan debt today. Who benefits and the politics behind it? A new wave of student loan forgiveness tonight as the White House keeps finding ways to try to figure out how to get some relief to people who borrowed money, even after the Supreme Court told the Biden administration last year, listen, you can't just wipe the slate clean on $400 billion in student debt. This kind of piecemeal relief can be critical, partly because of the president's 2020 campaign promise to forgive student loans. He said he'd do it. It's an issue that can be a sticking point for some of these younger voting blocs. Today's announcement cancels $5 billion in debt for about 74,000 people, many of whom worked in public sector jobs for more than a decade. We're talking teachers, nurses, firefighters, et cetera. Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. So, Aaron, as the Biden administration has worked to kind of unilaterally figure out how to cancel student loan debt, since that sweeping plan didn't work, they've gotten about $140 billion worth of it. That is less than half of the president's goal. Walk us through some of the politics here, right? Because there are some people who are on board with student loan relief. There are some people who are not.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And this, like you said, was a big campaign promise that Biden made while he was running for office. And so it was something that people have really been holding him to. As we've been out talking to Americans, voters, young people, while the president has been starting up his campaign for re-election, a lot of people have said that he hasn't made good on the promise to eliminate student debt. The reality is there have been 4 steps taken to try to eliminate this student debt since the Supreme Court said no to the plan that the Biden administration had proposed back in 2022. This court decision came last summer, and since then we've had 4 instances where there have been plans put out there for the reduction of student debt, the most recent one coming today, as you noted, to the tune of $5 billion. As you said, there's been a lot of support, especially among people who need that relief. We talked to one woman in South Carolina who had more than $200,000 in student loan debt that was canceled a couple of years back during the Biden administration. And she talked about how this was a game changer in her life, made it possible for her to be able to think about buying a home and doing other things with her money. And so those are the people that the Biden administration is trying to get to. At the same time, we've heard from the chairwoman, I should say, the House Education Committee, who said that the Biden administration needs a good dose of fiscal common sense, that these sorts of cancellations of debt are not the way that the administration should be moving forward, Hallie.
Okay, so now get to the numbers here, right? What it means for borrowers, like just practically, tangibly, if you're watching this, if you know somebody who's got student loan debt and that hasn't been canceled yet, like what's up here?
Yeah, so this move today is active today. We're talking about $5 billion. As you noted earlier, there are about 70 some odd thousand people who will be impacted by this particular move. 74,000 you see on the screen there, borrowers who are going to be impacted here. A total since the president's first move back in October of 3.7 million people, according to the White House, have now seen this student loan debt canceled. And in this instance, we're talking about people who've worked in public service jobs, teachers, firefighters, nurses, people like that. And then there's another, that's about 44,000 people. There's another 30,000 or so people who have been making payments, who have been under repayment efforts for up to 20 years. Those people are going to start to see this debt erased as well. And the president indicated today in the statement that he put out, Hallie, that he's not done yet. The administration is going to continue to work to see how it can get to millions more people seeing that debt disappear.
Aaron Gilchrist live for us there outside the White House. Thank you so much, Aaron. Still to come, a story you may want to stand up for. The new study on the risks of sitting at work. So a new study is out telling us to do what I just did, which is stand up. Get up and try to move around during the day, but it's laying out some very serious consequences if we don't. Doctors are finding that people who sit for most of their workday face a nearly 35% higher risk of dying from heart disease. It's not just that. Sitting too much is also linked to a higher risk of dying early. But here's some good news. Researchers say the effects of it can be reversed if you do like 10 to 15 to 30 minutes of exercise every day. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. This is why we have standing desks, because we know that sitting all day isn't like amazing for our hearts. But what's your big takeaway from these new results?
Well, first of all, I think it's rare that we get a study like this that is cloaked in so much positive news. You know, I mean, instead of I always joke I'm the Grim Reaper when I come on air. But, you know, we've known for so many years, it's true, that sitting is bad for you. And we have a lot of evidence that it increases the risk of heart disease and cancer and all-cause mortality. But I love the way they did this study because it really did demonstrate that not only if you add 15 to 30 minutes of leisure time activity every day, and that could just be walking to and from the bus. It doesn't need to be, you know, crazy stuff. And also, if you can alternate a little bit between sitting and standing so that you're not just at that desk all day, you can reverse a lot of these detrimental consequences, Hallie.
We know that the WHO, for the first time, it was during the pandemic, put out some guidelines on exercise. And they say, like, listen, the same kind of thing we're talking about here, try to stand up. If you're seeing patients and they do have lifestyles that just aren't conducive to that, right? Even if they're not working, if they're retired or whatever, college students, what are you telling them? How do you convey this to them?
So the number one thing that I will say to patients is that there does not exist any other intervention in medicine that is guaranteed to have benefits and guaranteed not to have side effects. There is no medicine under the sun that I can say that about. So that's number one. Number two, I'm a rheumatologist. So all of my patients with joint disease who are a little bit overweight, for example, knee osteoarthritis, the number one intervention that will help them is exercise and weight loss, not to mention how good it is for their hearts and how good it is for their brains. The number one thing, or the second thing that I then will tell people is do what you enjoy. There's not one prescription that is the right fit for everybody. You got to mix it up. That's going to keep people going back. Get a buddy to do it with you. That plus a healthy diet. Again, Hallie, those two interventions, they cost pretty much nothing, at least the exercise. You can go for a walk, and you really are guaranteed to reap benefits with literally zero side effects. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but I got to say it, and I say it every single time with every single patient, and they know it. They get tired of hearing it, but I have to tell them to do it.
I listen to this is why I stand up. This is why I'm standing here. I say, Dr. Natalie told me to do it, team. You got to get, I'm going to come into the studio and walk around a little bit. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. It's great to see you. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air as the East Coast is getting pummeled by yet another winter storm. One of a series of storms that have been shockingly deadly. 59 people in all killed in the snow and freeze this past week, as we're getting new video in of first responders rushing to prevent any more casualties. You've got to look at this here from the Kentucky State Police. A helicopter rescue of 4 college students. They went hiking. They got stuck in these brutal conditions. You see there, the helicopter managed to land. Those students are safely able to get on, get up, get out. In Michigan, you had another rescue. A state police officer helps a dog save his owner who fell through the ice. That's the dog. You see him running with like a disc over to the trapped man, gives it to him. He's able to pull himself up out of the water, obviously with some help. He's able to get safely out. In Buffalo, you have some New York area schools closed yet again, as they are just really a snow dungeon. Snow covering cars, houses, streets, everything. Out west, you have school districts in Oregon still closed, streets frozen over after an ice storm left a trail of destruction behind. Nearly 100,000 people in that state still do not have power. Some people haven't had the lights on for days. Temperatures in a lot of spots are just brutally cold. It's winter, we get it, but this is cold even for winter. In some spots, the wind chill is dropping into the way negative, right? 16 below zero there in Omaha. You can see 11 below zero in Minneapolis. with all of it creating a headache at the airports, which you know if you've been flying anywhere this week. Big delays again today. As of now, 6,000 of them, another 1,000 flights have been canceled altogether. We have meteorologist Michelle Grossman standing by, but first let's get to George Solis out in Philadelphia. And George, we talk about how deadly this storm is, especially down south. They're not used to seeing this kind of thing. Philadelphia really isn't used to seeing it either, at least in the last couple of years, right? What's your sense of how much this is catching people off guard or not?
Yeah, Hallie, all of this together, a reminder of just how scenic this can be, but also how treacherous, right? More than 700 days since Philadelphia has seen any significant snowfall or had a weather emergency of this magnitude. So, yeah, there is a component of people having to knock the rust off. When you talk about the fatalities that this storm you can attribute to right now, you really look at it in a big picture on a map, and you can see just how much this weather has impacted people coast to coast, right? Oregon, you had Tennessee with some 17 deaths. I mean, that is incredible. This gives you, again, a sense of just how much this weather has been impacting people around the country right now. And we're not through the woods yet, right? Western New York, we've seen feet and feet of snow accumulating. People can't even get to their doorsteps. Here in Philadelphia, sure, maybe just a couple of inches, but that is enough to be a major concern for people who have not dealt with this kind of weather. And that's why officials have asked people to take it seriously, even at this hour as the snow begins to taper, because as we know, the snow may be stopping, but now as the surfaces that are untreated and some of this turns to slush, it'll turn to ice with these frigid temperatures, creating a real big problem and hopefully no more fatalities. So we've been talking to people out here who were preparing for this and are taking this storm very seriously. Take a listen.
Honestly, it's kind of scary. I mean, just making sure your tires are all set up, but it's also fun. I love snow. It looks like chaos, but it's also peaceful at the same time.
I'm parked on a hill. I'm watching people slip up and down the street, so take it slow.
Yeah, and here, Hallie, we're in Manayunk in Philadelphia, which is an area that's known for a lot of restaurant and bars, and a lot of them actually closing down. Some bars still open at this hour, and that's mainly just because a lot of the business owners and some of the people here in the community have been shoveling sidewalks, making sure these surfaces stay treated. But the messaging from officials, and rightly so, is asking people to stay home until this storm passes because, again, we're not through the worst of it yet, and there is that big concern for that big freeze that is soon to come. Hallie?
George Solis live for us in Philly. George, thank you very much. Let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Please tell everybody that this weekend's going to feel so much better.
I wish. Hallie, I really, really wish on this Friday. But it will feel better next week. So we still have a lot to go, and it's the cold weather that we're going to be dealing with once again. And as we saw, it is life-threatening. We're going to see wind chills minus 20, minus 30. It draws the warmth from your skin first, and then your internal body temperature. It lowers it, and that's why we get frostbite and hypothermia. So this is something that we have to take seriously, not only tonight, tomorrow through Sunday, and then we get a pattern change later next week. But let's start right now because we're looking at nearly 50 million Americans still dealing with winter alerts. The main storm is in portions of the Northeast, also parts of the Tennessee Valley. This is winding down. But as George mentioned, we're going to see those temperatures plummeting. So we're going to see that ice over and really, really cold temperatures. 61 million Americans. And look at this map. From the northern plains through the central plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, down to the southeast, looking at wind chill alerts, whether it's an advisory, a watch, a warning. And that's because we have air temperatures that are very chilly, well below normal. You factor in the winds. It doesn't take a whole lot of wind to bring that wind chill down. And we're looking at wind chills. This is tomorrow at Lexington. It's going to feel like 7 degrees. So that's what you need to dress for. Light, loose layers, but you want to trap that heat in. We're looking at Birmingham feeling like 20 tomorrow. The air temperature not even above freezing, all the way down to Birmingham. Memphis, 21. That will be the air temperature. It's going to feel like 10. And Washington, D.C. feeling like the teens tomorrow. So, Hallie, bundle up with your little beautiful girl as you head out tomorrow. Sunday, we're looking at temperatures so chilly once again. We are trapped in this icy cold weather. Springfield, the wind chill is 20 degrees. Atlanta, 37. New York City, below freezing on Sunday, well below normal for this time of year. You factor in those winds, it's going to feel like 21 degrees. But I will bring some good news. Not tomorrow. There's that jet stream. So typically it goes right across the country. It is dipped. What does that do? It allows that cold air from Canada. It sort of opens up those doors and all that Arctic air comes down. And that's why it's reaching as far south as the southeast. But it's going to start to lift up at the end of next week. And we are actually going to be above average, which is such good news. For most of the eastern part of the nation, even the northern tier that's been suffering so much the past week and a half, we're going to see above average temperatures. So as we go throughout next week, we're looking at that January thaw. Let's stop with 50 degrees in Cincinnati. That's going to feel pretty balmy there. 51 in D.C. and 43 in New York City. I know it doesn't sound like much, but much, much better than where we have been the past week. Hallie?
Michelle, thank you very much. A lot to process there, a lot for you as well. Appreciate it. Yeah. Let's get to some developing news tonight because Alec Baldwin has been charged again with involuntary manslaughter for that fatal Rust movie set shooting back in 2021 that killed the cinematographer, Hallie Hutchins. And if you're like, well, wait a second, I thought those charges were dropped. You are correct. The original case was dismissed last April because prosecutors cited new facts in the case. By dismissing it, they left the door open to Baldwin being charged again, and today he was. He was indicted by a New Mexico grand jury. Baldwin has consistently said he did not pull the trigger when that gun fired the shot that killed Hutchins. His lawyers today saying, we look forward to our day in court. Dana Griffin is joining us now live from L.A. And Dana, this indictment comes exactly 1 year to the day after the first involuntary manslaughter case against him. Baldwin's lawyers say they look forward to their day in court. He hasn't actually been in court yet for anything having to do with this shooting.
Yeah, that's because those charges came in January of last year. They were dropped just months later. And the prosecutor said even back then that just because we are dropping these charges doesn't mean that we can't refile them. And clearly that's what they have done in this case. Now, Alec Baldwin, as you mentioned, has said repeatedly that he never pulled the trigger of this prop gun, that he had only pulled back the hammer. And so the defense raised questions on whether this gun had been working properly. And so that's why we ended up with those charges dropped around last April. Well, here we are again. The family has civilly sued him. Not only have Hallie Hutchinson's parents and also her husband. Now, the husband's civil lawsuit resulted in a settlement. And part of that was to make sure that the profits from the movie Rust would go to their younger son, who was about 9 at the time that his mother was killed. So right now that film is complete. Whether it makes air, Hallie, is another question. But another question here still remains is exactly how did those live rounds mix up with the dummy rounds that were used on set? We know that the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, is also facing charges. She's expected to go to trial next month. She has pleaded not guilty to involuntary manslaughter and evidence tampering. Hallie?
A big reason, I should say, why the charges were dropped back before and why he's being recharged is this forensic report, right, around the modifications to the gun. Can you pull on that thread a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that report here. It says, although Alec Baldwin repeatedly denies pulling the trigger, given the tests, findings, and observations reported here, the trigger had to be pulled or depressed sufficiently to release the fully cocked or retracted hammer. So this evidence is possibly why the grand jury issued the indictment that we saw today. Alec Baldwin has denied pulling that trigger, but there must be something in this report that shows that he might have. Now, what happens next? An arraignment date has not been set, but Alec Baldwin could waive that next appearance if he decides to enter a not guilty plea. But as you said, the lawyers are looking forward to their day in court. They plan to fight this. And I spoke with our NBC analyst, Danny Zavalos, just moments ago, and he says that the defense could have a good argument here because you've already got 2 other people, one that has pleaded not guilty and this armorer who is going to court next month. He could easily point the blame and say, hey, I was the actor here, even though I was a co-producer. I had no idea that live rounds were in that prop gun that was handed to me and I was told that it was safe. So we're going to be watching this closely and see what comes out next, Hallie.
Dana Griffin live for us there in L.A. Thank you very much. I want to show you something now, some other developing news, the moments that flames start shooting out of a Boeing cargo plane headed to Puerto Rico, something that the NTSB and the FAA are now looking into. You have to see this. Look at this.
Oh my God, it's on fire.
Yeah, it appears to be on fire, right? Somebody caught that video. They captured it probably on their phone, showing this Atlas Air cargo flight over Miami. And you can see what looks like a trail of flames behind it. Atlas saying in a statement today, the plane had to make an emergency landing after it had engine issues not long after takeoff. Here's what that moment sounded like from inside the cockpit.
Mayday, Giant 095, heavy engine fire. Request section back to the airport. Giant 95, heavy, which engine? And is it out already, or you guys are still trying to work that out? It's engine number 2, and we're still trying to work it out. Roger. Giant 95, heavy, did you guys lose it on the runway or in the air? On the climb out. Roger.
Now, we mentioned that that plane was a Boeing plane, right? And you know that Boeing has had a series of issues, including most recently that door plug on one of its planes blowing out of an Alaska Airlines flight midair a couple weeks ago. Boeing says it's not making any comment on this latest incident, but obviously there are questions around what has happened here. I want to bring in Marissa Parra, who is joining us now from Miami. So this was an issue, it appears, with the engine. That means it may not directly be a Boeing issue, right? Explain that.
What I can say is that, yes, it may not be a Boeing issue. This is, of course, we know still early. This happened last night. The plane took off at 10:22 from here at Miami International. It was on the way to Puerto Rico, and around 10:30 it landed right back here. So it hasn't even been a full 24 hours. But what I can tell you, Hallie, is that according to Atlas Air, they say that this appears to be an engine malfunction, as you mentioned. And just for reference, Atlas Air does have the largest Boeing 747 freighter fleet in the world. And Boeing has not really said much. They did say that they would support the company. They said that they would support the NTSB in their investigation. It is worth noting that GE is the manufacturer for the engine. And obviously this is something that we know the FAA, the NTSB are going to be looking into. We know that according to sources familiar with the investigation, they found a softball-sized hole above engine number 2. And Hallie, I know that when they're looking at this, they're going to be trying to figure out and ascertain whether this was a contained or uncontained engine failure. Again, GE is the manufacturer for the engine. Boeing is not responsible for the engine. So there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered here, and that's why there are independent parties like the FAA and NTSB who will be taking a look at this to figure out who and what was to blame for last night.
One of the things that we've talked a lot about, Marissa, including with our colleague, of course, Tom Costello, who covers aviation, is the way that Boeing is now trying to do some reputational damage control, if you will, after multiple issues with its planes. Now there's this investigation. How does that fit into the bigger picture?
Right. Well, share prices have been down. We know that. And when we talk about where blame lies, regardless of whether or not this was a Boeing specific issue, whether or not this was an engine failure, malfunction that had nothing to do with Boeing's responsibility, it is still a malfunction that happened on a Boeing plane. It's still not a good look. It's still a PR issue that they have to deal with. And we know that they have been plagued with issues, not just in the last 2 weeks with Alaskan Airlines as those share prices are down, but even in the years prior. And so when we look at how this has had an impact, we know that Boeing's largest rival, European Airbus, just within the last week, their timing is interesting, announcing that they are the world's largest plane manufacturer. Again, this is Boeing's largest rival putting out this statement, putting out these numbers that you're about to see on your screen in just a moment, saying that they delivered 735 commercial aircrafts in 2023. That's an 11% increase from 2022. And again, the timing here, Hallie, we know that there are Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes that remain grounded. The FAA says 40 of the 171 grounded planes have been inspected, but there are still many planes that need to still be inspected. There are still a lot of cancellations and impacted flights from this. So regardless of whether or not last night's plane was Boeing's fault or not, this is still not a good time and not an easy time to be in charge of the comms department at Boeing right now.
Marissa Parra, live for us in Miami. Thank you so much. To some other breaking aircraft news, if you will. A smaller plane, 7 people on board, made an emergency landing, not on a runway, but on a road, a highway, basically, in Virginia, the Loudoun County Parkway. Look at this. This is it, just sitting on the road. It happened right after this plane left Dulles Airport, just outside D.C. It was heading up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a Southern Airways flight. And incredibly, we're being told that nobody was hurt in the air or on the ground. Let's bring in our WRC reporter from our NBC affiliate, Mauricio Casillas. What happened here? Was this weather related? Anybody in Washington, Mauricio, knows that it's snowing. It was today. Do we know anything else about the circumstances?
Yeah, Hallie, that's a central question out here tonight. What crews are still trying to figure out. You can see behind me, it's an astonishing scene, really. That single-engine Cessna that, as you mentioned, turned this highway, the Loudoun County Parkway, into a runway. We're still trying to figure out if it was weather-related, but, you know, a lot of snow was coming down here earlier. It left Dulles International Airport, which is about 2 miles away, and then minutes later, it veered south before making that emergency landing. The astonishing thing here is that no one was hurt. All 7 7 passengers, the 5 passengers and the 2 crew members. The 2 crew members were able to make it out alive, and then no one on the roadways was hurt. I mean, and the thing here is that the weather ironically played a role in it, because a lot of people were off because it was a school day. So a busy rush hour traffic that you normally see, you're not seeing right now. And then that's one of the reasons I think today we're seeing a scene that is astonishing, but, you know, could have been a lot worse, Hallie.
Yeah, and that's a great point, too. School was closed today. You had a lot of offices closed because of the snow in D.C., so maybe that meant fewer people on the road. Mauricio, thank you so much for being there, and thanks to our friends at WRC. It's good to see you. In just the next hour, former President Donald Trump is set to get an interesting endorsement coming from South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, a former candidate himself, by the way, a former rival in this race to Mr. Trump. The whole thing, a bit of a snub to Scott's fellow South Carolinian Nikki Haley, who also happens to be Mr. Trump's chief rival in New Hampshire. It's coming as Haley is cramming her schedule there with 6 events just today, knowing this state could be make or break for her campaign once voters head to the polls on Tuesday. And while the future of her candidacy after that may be up in the air, she's making pretty clear today what she will not be doing, telling reporters today that serving as vice president is, in her words, off the table. That's the most definitive that she's been on this yet. It means former President Trump, I guess, can cross her off his potential VP list, a list, according to NBC News, that includes New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who's set to hit the trail for Mr. Trump tomorrow, campaigning for him. Stefanik checks a lot of boxes that Mr. Trump has considered his favorite, right? She got some national attention recently for her grilling of university presidents over claims of anti-Semitism. Another thing probably grabbing Mr. Trump's attention, her fierce loyalty to him. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is joining us now from Concord, New Hampshire. So, okay, another endorsement here for former President Trump coming from Tim Scott, adding to a list of endorsements he's already racked up. But it brings us to this age-old question, you know, do endorsements move the needle enough in some of these key places? What do you hear from voters?
What we hear from voters is that this is Donald Trump's political party. And I think it's more so the voters who have the word, and that it's the politicians, if I may, Hallie, that are responding. Not only in Iowa, Donald Trump winning handily with nearly 30-point win, but this was a message to other elected officials that, look, in the state of Iowa, the governor, Kim Reynolds, endorsed Ron DeSantis. That didn't get him very far. Here in New Hampshire, the governor, Chris Sununu, he endorsed Nikki Haley on Tuesday night here in the New Hampshire primary. I have a better idea of how impactful that endorsement is. But this is more telling that there has not been a consolidation of support around an anti-Trump candidate, the Trump alternative. Instead, it's a consolidating of support around Donald Trump. Not only North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum over the weekend, who was previously a Republican presidential candidate himself endorsing Trump, but now Tim Scott, who you'll recall actually got his job in the U.S. Senate when he was appointed by then South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Now look at what Donald Trump is looking at when he sees congressional endorsements. In the U.S. House of Representatives, more than half of the Republicans, Hallie, have endorsed his presidential bid. And when you look at the Senate, you see a smattering of senators all around the country who are getting in line behind him. Compare that to Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, who remain in this race. They have nobody, no senators on their sides. Quite the contrast, Hallie.
So the other piece of this, right, is the fact that we're even talking about the Veep stakes at all, if you will, with Nikki Haley making those comments today that that's off the table for her. She's been asked about it a lot. That's pretty definitive from her. You've got the Tim Scott thing, perhaps putting his name sort of back in the speculation, back in the mix for that. Right. Donald Trump Jr. is coming out today saying Tucker Carlson could be in consideration. You know, grains of salt on all of this, if you will, as it is early days yet. But what is your sense of where this goes? Because the fact that we're even talking about it all, Vaughn, you know, you covered then VP Mike Pence, right, in the 2016 cycle. Like, you know, Veep stakes is typically not something that happens till later on.
Right, and what I consistently hear this time around, Hallie, is that Donald Trump's foremost attribute that he's looking for out of a vice presidential pick is loyalty. Of course, he all but threw Mike Pence off the cliff on January 6th when Mike Pence certified the election, and those two have not had a relationship ever since then. And this go around, you look at Tucker Carlson, who has been an ally on media for Donald Trump, and you look at Elise Stefanik there, the New York Congresswoman. She was part of his defense team during his impeachment impeachment proceedings. She is somebody who was just on Meet the Press with our colleague Kristen Welker last weekend, in which she defiantly defended Donald Trump's many controversial stances. She is somebody who he and his inner circle see as somebody who would stand side by side and defiantly defend him. As for Tim Scott, notably when he was running for president against Donald Trump, Hallie, everybody acknowledged that he never really took Donald Trump on directly, never really critiqued him personally. And so that was always seen as Tim Scott keeping part of the door open to potentially serving as his VP pick. And now the question in these months ahead is Donald Trump consolidates support. Who would he actually turn to as his right hand if he were to get back in the White House in 2025?
Vaughn Hilliard live for us in Concord, New Hampshire, getting ready for another night on the campaign trail. Vaughn, thank you. We will be joining Vaughn next week. I'll be out there starting on Monday with our big coverage kicking off Tuesday, 5 o'clock Eastern. I'll be joined by my friends and colleagues, Kristen Welker and Tom Yamas, for every single thing you need to know about what could be a critical race here in the Republican primary. That's Tuesday, however you're watching, right here on NBC News Now. So listen, in just the last couple of hours, we've seen the S&P close at a record high for the first time in 2 years. That is not a bad thing necessarily. You got the Now and the NASDAQ up too, and they're all in positive territory for the year. Coming out of some new data today shows Americans finally feeling better about the economy, per a new survey from the University of Michigan. Look at this. Consumer confidence is the highest it's been since July of 2021, up more than 20% from a year ago, since July 2021. The survey also showed people are less worried about inflation, probably because it's been coming down from record highs over the last year plus. Lower inflation, of course, always a good thing if you're waiting till this year to make some kind of a big, important purchase, maybe a house, maybe a car. New data out tonight shows the housing market in desperate need of a rebound anyway, with home sales last year the lowest they've been since 1995, the year the first Toy Story movie rolled into theaters. I want to bring in Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. So the sentiment about the economy is now 60% higher than the all-time lows we recorded back in not last June, but the June before, so June 2020. That was when people were feeling terrible about the economy. Since then, we've seen the numbers start to get better. People haven't been feeling better, maybe until now. Do you think that so-called vibe session is starting to end?
Yeah, it is starting to end, and people are feeling better. A lot of that has to do, as you mentioned, with inflation, particularly gas prices. That's the thing we see every time we leave our house. If gas prices are lower, we feel better, and they're about 33 cents lower than they were a year ago. So that's a pretty big deal in people's psyche right now. But things in general, prices are not increasing as much as they used to. Some are even going down. That's a big deal. And then you mentioned the stock market. Don't underestimate the wealth effect of the stock market being at a record high. It makes people feel wealthier, even though they may not necessarily be. So all these things pointing to a good sign, a potential soft landing for the economy. That's good news. Investors way out ahead of this. The stock market's been rallying since late October.
The housing market, too, if people are starting to feel better about things, depending on what the Fed does on interest rates, maybe people will start to think about, hey, is now the time when I can afford something like a house, even though we've seen prices for houses last year hitting record highs. So what's your outlook for 2024 if people were thinking about something like that?
We're going to see a little bit of a spring awakening for the housing market because interest rates are going down. Home prices still very high, but so many people on the sidelines waiting to buy a home. Just this stat will put it in perspective. In December, only 29% of the homes sold were from first-time home buyers. That's usually around 40%. They are waiting for rates to come down to get into the housing market. Hopefully, we're going to see that this spring because a good housing market keeps the economy humming, too. That could also be good news. A good news Friday, Hallie.
Caleb Silver, we will take it. Thank you from your lips to the universe's ears. Appreciate it. Coming up here tonight, a new lawsuit now from the family of Kristen Smart, why they're suing the California school where she was allegedly killed. Plus, how Ukraine is stepping up attacks in Russia. Never before seen video shows former President Trump sitting down with New York's Attorney General last April, talking, among other things, about the legal fees he's racking up. Listen.
My biggest expense is probably legal fees. But fortunately, that's okay. But we have a lot of cash, we have great assets, and we have a very valuable company.
Now, that's part of Mr. Trump's civil fraud trial in New York, part of this looming web of legal issues he faces. You see that web there. Today, we're focusing on another one of those issues out of Georgia with new claims against the district attorney there. Blaine Alexander explains in tonight's Breakdown.
With former President Trump facing legal fights on multiple fronts, legal experts say it's the election interference case in Georgia that could prove to be the most legally perilous. Charges brought by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, accusing Trump and 18 co-defendants of a scheme to illegally overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia. A sprawling indictment stemming from that now infamous January 2021 phone call with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
But now, one of Trump's lesser-known co-defendants, Michael Roman, is making explosive allegations against Willis that could upend the case. Roman, who has pleaded not guilty to charges for his role in the so-called fake elector scheme, is accusing Willis of having a personal relationship with Nathan Wade, a special prosecutor hired by her office to work this case. In a motion filed last week, Roman alleges Willis is profiting significantly from the relationship, claiming Wade paid for vacations for the two of them with money he was paid by Willis's office. Roman claims that should disqualify Willis and force the court to dismiss the charges entirely. The motion, notably, did not provide any direct evidence of these claims, only citing, quote, sources with knowledge. So far, Wade has not commented on the allegations. A spokesperson for Willis declined comment and said the DA's office will respond in a court filing. But over the weekend, Willis appeared to indirectly address the allegations while speaking at a church for a Martin Luther King Day celebration.
I appointed 3 special counsel, as is my right to do, paid them all the same hourly rate. They only attacked one. First thing they say, oh, she gonna play the race card now. But no, God, isn't it them who's playing the race card when they only question one?
In yet another twist, Willis has also been subpoenaed to testify in Nathan Wade's ongoing divorce proceedings. Willis is pushing back, seeking a protective order to stop that subpoena, accusing Wade's estranged wife Joycelyn of trying to harass her and damage her professional reputation. In a statement to NBC News, an attorney for Joycelyn Wade said they had hoped to resolve the divorce fairly and privately, adding, but apparently Fulton County DA Fani Willis would prefer to use her public platform. And in a new filing today, Joycelyn Wade cites bank records that show her husband paid for multiple flights for himself and Willis. On February 15th, those initial allegations of misconduct will go before Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee in a scheduled hearing. He has given Willis until February 2nd to respond in writing to those allegations.
Blaine is joining us now outside the Fulton County Courthouse. Blaine, thank you for that breakdown tonight. So look ahead here. What else we know about these bank records and what you're hearing from legal experts on how real the concerns are here?
Well, Hallie, as you heard, there is a lot to sift through when you kind of look at these allegations that have become this kind of unexpected detour in this Fulton County case. But as for those bank records, they were just brought forward today as part of a filing. 4 pages of records, credit card records to be exact. I've gone through all of them, and they list at least 2 flights, one that show Willis and Wade traveling to, or at least intending to travel to San Francisco, the other to Miami. And so there are a couple of charges there, but those were what Joycelyn Wade's attorneys were pointing to as saying that's evidence that they were, in fact, traveling together. Now, as for what this could mean for the overarching election interference case here, it's important to point out that even if DA Fani Willis is disqualified, of course, if she's disqualified, her office is disqualified, but that does not automatically mean these charges go away. It simply means that it shifts over to a different DA, a different jurisdiction in a neighboring county somewhere, and they would then move forward in prosecuting the charges. So it's not certainly a magic bullet. If she is, and that's a big if she is disqualified, doesn't mean the charges automatically go away. But what it does is that it certainly draws a lot of scrutiny to a case that is already getting a lot of criticism, a lot of attention, including from the former president himself. He has been talking about this, saying that this discredits the whole thing. He posted on Truth Social, his social media platform, not too long ago, calling Willis and Wade, quote unquote, the lovers, saying they knew that I did nothing wrong. The hoax has to be totally and completely dismissed, and the quote unquote lovebirds should face appropriate consequences. So certainly opening the entire thing up to criticism for those who were already looking not favorably upon these charges in the first place. Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, live for us there in Atlanta. Blaine, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the family of Kristen Smart, a college student allegedly killed on campus in 1996, is now suing Cal Poly University. They're accusing the school of negligence, claiming they didn't search the room of the suspect until more than 2 weeks after Smart disappeared. A spokesperson for the university said it had no comment, as this is a pending legal matter. Smart's body has never been found. Paul Flores was found guilty of killing her in 2022. Number 2, thousands of anti-abortion protesters in D.C. today for the annual March for Life. It's the second one since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, that landmark ruling. Since then, 14 states have banned abortion, while voters in 7 states have chosen to protect abortion rights or strike down new restrictions. Number 3, more than 500,000 beds sold at places like Walmart and Wayfair are getting recalled because they can break and even collapse while you're in them. Dozens of people have apparently gotten hurt. You can see if your bed is on that recall list. Check the Consumer Product Safety Commission's website or head to NBC News. We've got a little link for you there. Number 4, a new study from LendingTree shows single women in this country own more homes than single men, like 3 million more. That's even as women still earn less money than men for the same jobs, according to Pew Research. Number 5, Apple says it'll open up its tap-and-go mobile pay system to competitors. The company is basically trying to resolve an antitrust case that accuses it of restricting competition. And it's also trying to avoid a fine that could potentially be in the billions of dollars range. The changes would last for a decade and apply to the EU and a couple other countries. We are just learning that the U.S. is hitting the Houthis with more airstrikes in Yemen, adding to this escalating tit-for-tat we've seen with the White House suggesting allies are not doing enough to stop the attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea. The president just tweeting out this picture. It's from his first phone call with the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in weeks. They haven't talked for nearly a month. They did today, as Netanyahu apparently tells the U.S. he rejects its idea for a Palestinian state after the war in Gaza. A new and public blow to the White House push to get a plan in place that could bring this war to an end and create a long-term solution in the region. It comes as a senior UN official now warns Gaza may be too far gone to save. Something like 60% of homes damaged in attacks, along with nearly 400 schools and hospitals, raising more questions about what could come next for Gaza and the 2 million people who live there. Raf Sanchez has more from Tel Aviv.
Hallie, President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking tonight for the first time in nearly a month, which is really notable because in the days immediately after the October 7th Hamas terror attack, these two leaders were speaking almost every day. This conversation coming at a moment of very public disagreement between the two allies. The U.S. telling Israel it needs to scale down its war in Gaza faster. Israel says it is lowering the rate of airstrikes, but there are still more than 100 Palestinians being killed every day, including civilians, and also at loggerheads over the question of what comes next. The U.S. is saying Israel needs to end its occupation of the Palestinian people and allow for a pathway towards a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Netanyahu, at the head, of course, of a far-right government, saying that is a non-starter. The Prime Minister under pressure tonight from a member of his own war cabinet. Gadi Eisenkot is a senior Israeli minister. He's a former general. Hallie, he has a lot of stature in this country, partly because his own son was killed fighting in Gaza. Eisenkot giving this explosive interview to Israeli television saying Netanyahu is not telling the Israeli public the truth about the war and saying that the prime minister very nearly triggered a second front with Hezbollah in Lebanon, something the U.S. has been very clear it does not want to see happen. Hallie.
Our thanks to Raf Sanchez for that important reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of other international stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams have done it for you. Here are some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Russia, officials say a Ukrainian drone hit an oil depot, setting it on fire. It happened in a city, look at that, like 40 miles from the Ukrainian border, according to state media. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has promised to strike more targets inside Russia this year. And look at this out of Panama, a big fire at a landfill, blowing toxic smoke over the country's capital today. People had to evacuate in some spots. Officials think the fire was probably started on purpose. Panama's health minister says centers are set up to help treat people dealing with any respiratory problems or any eye irritation. And out of Japan, some relief today after the country's space agency successfully landed a probe on the moon. Now it's trying to establish contact. It could take a month for that to happen. The space agency says the lunar lander is a new step toward exploring the polar regions of the moon, which could contain oxygen, fuel, and maybe even water. A former American Airlines flight attendant is in custody for trying, allegedly, to record a young girl in the plane's bathroom, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, which says the male attendant escorted the 14-year-old girl to a bathroom that was open. He allegedly went in the bathroom before her, saying he had to wash his hands and that the toilet was broken. That's when she went in and noticed this on the back of her toilet seat. You see it? It's a red sticker. It says "seat broken." And at the bottom, look, you can see the light of what looks like a phone. She took a picture and then showed her parents, they say, with law enforcement allegedly finding 11 more stickers like that in this guy's suitcase, even more videos of other female minors in his iCloud. American Airlines says the flight attendant has not worked since this incident in September, saying in a statement they take these allegations very seriously. Let's bring in David Noriega now for more. And David, it's a story that's getting a lot of attention tonight, with the acting U.S. attorney here calling this deeply disturbing, saying it's not anything that any parent or child should ever have to worry about. Talk us more through it.
Yeah, Hallie, the court records in this case are, in fact, very disturbing and pretty upsetting to read. I read the affidavit that the FBI investigator in charge of the case filed as part of this prosecution. So up until this point, the story had been about how this flight attendant allegedly tried to record this young girl in the bathroom on this one flight. What's really disturbing about this is that when the FBI searched his iCloud account, they found several other videos of incidents in which he had apparently, allegedly, successfully done the same thing without getting caught in the act like he was in September. These are 4 videos, one of which was taken just about a week prior to the incident in September, all involving young girls, the youngest of whom, Hallie, was 7 years old when this happened. So as a result of this, Thompson now faces 2 counts, one for attempted sexual exploitation of children and another for possession of child pornography depicting a prepubescent child. He, each of those counts respectively could lead to him spending up to 30 years and 20 years in prison, so he could potentially be facing a significant period of time in prison. Hallie?
The 14-year-old girl's family is also holding American Airlines accountable here. What do they say should have happened?
Right, so they sued the airline last year shortly after this incident. And again, in their lawsuit is mostly just about this one incident that their daughter was involved in. They say that the airline should have known, either did know or should have known, that Thompson was a danger. They also say that other flight attendants should have done more to intervene. Now that we know these details about the fact that this individual was allegedly engaged in this activity in a sort of systematic way for months prior to this one incident when he was caught, I expect that probably will figure into the lawsuit and into the family's claim that the airline should have done more to prevent this from happening. Now, as you said, American Airlines has responded to this lawsuit, saying that they are taking these allegations very seriously, that Thompson hasn't worked since this incident, and, they're going to have to let this all play out in court. Hallie?
David Noriega live for us with this story. David, thank you. Coming up here on the show, the Biden administration canceling billions more in student loan debt today. Who benefits and the politics behind it? A new wave of student loan forgiveness tonight as the White House keeps finding ways to try to figure out how to get some relief to people who borrowed money, even after the Supreme Court told the Biden administration last year, listen, you can't just wipe the slate clean on $400 billion in student debt. This kind of piecemeal relief can be critical, partly because of the president's 2020 campaign promise to forgive student loans. He said he'd do it. It's an issue that can be a sticking point for some of these younger voting blocs. Today's announcement cancels $5 billion in debt for about 74,000 people, many of whom worked in public sector jobs for more than a decade. We're talking teachers, nurses, firefighters, et cetera. Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. So, Aaron, as the Biden administration has worked to kind of unilaterally figure out how to cancel student loan debt, since that sweeping plan didn't work, they've gotten about $140 billion worth of it. That is less than half of the president's goal. Walk us through some of the politics here, right? Because there are some people who are on board with student loan relief. There are some people who are not.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And this, like you said, was a big campaign promise that Biden made while he was running for office. And so it was something that people have really been holding him to. As we've been out talking to Americans, voters, young people, while the president has been starting up his campaign for re-election, a lot of people have said that he hasn't made good on the promise to eliminate student debt. The reality is there have been 4 steps taken to try to eliminate this student debt since the Supreme Court said no to the plan that the Biden administration had proposed back in 2022. This court decision came last summer, and since then we've had 4 instances where there have been plans put out there for the reduction of student debt, the most recent one coming today, as you noted, to the tune of $5 billion. As you said, there's been a lot of support, especially among people who need that relief. We talked to one woman in South Carolina who had more than $200,000 in student loan debt that was canceled a couple of years back during the Biden administration, and she talked about how this was a game changer in her life, made it possible for her to be able to think about buying a home and doing other things with her money. And so those are the people that the Biden administration is trying to get to. At the same time, we've heard from the chairwoman, I should say, of the House Education Committee, who said that the Biden administration needs a good dose of fiscal common sense, that these sorts of cancellations of debt are not the way that the administration should be moving forward, Hallie.
Okay, so now get to the numbers here, right? What it means for borrowers, like just practically, tangibly, if you're watching this, if you know somebody who's got student loan debt and that hasn't been canceled yet, like what's up here?
Yeah, so this move today is active today. We're talking about $5 billion. As you noted earlier, there are about 70 some odd thousand people who will be impacted by this particular move. 74,000 you see on the screen there, borrowers who are going to be impacted here. A total since the president's first move back in October of 3.7 million people, according to the White House, have now seen this student loan debt canceled. And in this instance, we're talking about people who've worked in public service jobs, teachers, firefighters, nurses, people like that. And then there's another, that's about 44,000 people. There's another 30,000 or so people who have been making payments, who have been under repayment efforts for up to 20 years. Those people are going to start to see this debt erased as well. And the president indicated today in the statement that he put out, Hallie, that he's not done yet. The administration is going to continue to work to see how it can get to millions more people seeing that debt disappear.
Aaron Gilchrist live for us there outside the White House. Thank you so much, Aaron. Still to come, a story you may want to stand up for. A new study on the risks of sitting at work. So a new study is out telling us to do what I just did, which is stand up. Get up and try to move around during the day, but it's laying out some very serious consequences if we don't. Doctors are finding that people who sit for most of their workday face a nearly 35% higher risk of dying from heart disease. It's not just that. Sitting too much is also linked to a higher risk of dying early. But here's some good news. Researchers say the effects of it can be reversed if you do like 10 to 15 to 30 minutes of exercise every day. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. This is why we have standing desks, because we know that sitting all day isn't like amazing for our hearts. But what's your big takeaway from these new results?
Well, first of all, I think it's rare that we get a study like this that is cloaked in so much positive news. You know, I mean, instead of I always joke I'm the Grim Reaper when I come on air. But, you know, we've known for so many years, it's true, that sitting is bad for you. And we have a lot of evidence that it increases the risk of heart disease and cancer and all-cause mortality. But I love the way they did this study, because it really did demonstrate that not only if you add 15 to 30 minutes of leisure time activity every day, and that could just be walking to and from the bus. It doesn't need to be, you know, crazy stuff. And also, if you can alternate a little bit between sitting and standing so that you're not just at that desk all day, you can reverse a lot of these detrimental consequences, Hallie.
We know that the WHO, for the first time, it was during the pandemic, put out some guidelines on exercise. And they say, like, listen, the same kind of thing we're talking about here, try to stand up. If you're seeing patients and they do have lifestyles that just aren't conducive to that, right? Even if they're not working, if they're retired or whatever, college students, what are you telling them? How do you convey this to them?
So the number one thing that I will say to patients is that there does not exist any other intervention in medicine that is guaranteed to have benefits and guaranteed not to have side effects. There is no medicine under the sun that I can say that about. So that's number one. Number two, I'm a rheumatologist. So all of my patients with joint disease who are a little bit overweight, for example, knee osteoarthritis, the number one intervention that will help them is exercise and weight loss, not to mention how good it is for their hearts and how good it is for their brains. The number one thing, or the second thing that I then will tell people is do what you enjoy. There's not one prescription that is the right fit for everybody. You got to mix it up. That's going to keep people going back. Get a buddy to do it with you. That plus a healthy diet. Again, Hallie, those two interventions, they cost pretty much nothing, at least the exercise. You can go for a walk, and you really are guaranteed to reap benefits with literally zero side effects. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but I got to say it, and I say it every single time with every single patient, and they know it. They get tired of hearing it, but I have to tell them to do it.
I listen to this is why I stand up. This is why I'm standing here. I say, Dr. Natalie told me to do it, team. You got to get, I'm going to come into the studio and walk around a little bit. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. It's great to see you. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.